Well, I'm a carpenter, I spend most of my time working on houses to make a living. But when I work on a boat, I really feel like I'm doing something that satisfies me deep down in my soul. Everything that you do on a boat is challenging. They're all curves. They're steam bending. Plus, they're visual. They're so beautiful. They're so much different than houses. And I've always had a passion for boats my entire life, as long as I can remember. And I don't know, it's just one of those things. Everyone should have a passion in life, and mine is boats, I guess. And dogs. I like dogs a lot. There was a certain style of boat that I wanted back in the 80s. Drove up to Maine a few times and looked at some boats up there and decided it was impossible to buy the kind of boat that I wanted, so I thought I might as well build one. And that's what I did. I carved some half models to get the shape that I was looking for. And then I built a Nomans Land double-ender, 20 feet long. Boats were popular about 7,500 years ago, back 200 years before that even. They were used to sail over to Nomans Land to catch fish, and they would have summer communities on Nomans Land. So they needed a boat they could pull up on the beach at night when they were through fishing, because there were no natural harbors on Nomans Land. So I thought that was a pretty good idea, as I wanted a boat I could cruise around on, and if I wanted to pull up on the beach somewhere to spend the night, or to have a picnic or something, or get away from a storm, I would have a boat that could do that.
Most of the no-man's boats that were used for fishing did not have a cabin the way this one does. I put a cabin on this one because I wanted to be able to spend the night on board and stay relatively dry.
The original Nomans Land boats were very wide, so they could hold a lot of fish. They weren't very good sailors, but I didn't want that, and I wasn't going to be catching a lot of fish. But the only thing I'd have in my hold would be a few cases of beer or wine. So I shaped out some half models and came up with some lines that I thought was pretty slick, and went ahead with that and built them on my own lines. Lofted it out and started building it in a barn in Chilmark at the Lucy Vincent house. The lofting is still up in the barn in Chilmark. You can still see it on the floor there, where I painted the floor white and drew out the profile of the boat and all our stations. I got the keel built there in Chilmark. The keel is of hard pine, which is very resistant to rot and worms. And then I loaded it on the top of my Volvo and drove it down to Tyus Cove, where I was spending the summer, in a teepee. Built a little shed and continued building my boat there, right on the Tisbury Great Pond, without electricity. I built it the way the old timers would build it, out of doors in just a plastic shop. No distractions except the swans and the otters. Hardly saw any people. Everything was done by hand. Sawing out the planks was done by hand. Ripping the planks, I would use a rip saw for ripping boards lengthwise instead of cutting them off to length. You're cutting the whole length of them. Lay it up on the bench and make these 25-foot long saw cuts, and then have to plane it all down. It was good. It set a very nice pace. I prefer just using all hand tools. That way it gives you a nice way to think. I bought the best materials I could to build the boat. The planking was all cedar, as clear as I could get the wood from knots. When you're planking a boat, every piece is different. Every plank is different.
I built her lap strake because I wanted to see all of the planking. I wanted to see all of the strakes. I thought it gave it a nice look. Also, I think originally when these boats were built by fishermen and farmers, they also built them a lap strake because the lap strake was an easier way to build a boat. And when these boats were built and they were sailed over to Nomans Land, at the end of every day they were pulled up after a day's fishing, so they wanted to keep their boats as light as possible. Also, when you build a boat lap strake like this, every plank is riveted to each other, so it's extremely strong. My good friend helped me name her. We named her Sfogliatelle after the Italian piece of pastry that it has lots of little flakes on it like this, which are similar to this boat. The frames are all of clear white oak.
when I had to bend the frames for the boat, I used island oak because you want to use green wood when you're steam bending. I had a couple of trees cut down over at the Bailey's farm there and milled them out in a shop with power tools. And then I took them back to the boat shed where I was building the boat, constructed a steam box, which is just an airtight box that you can load the frames into. And you build a fire with just a wood fire on the ground, and I think I used an old kettle with a wooden top on it and with a hose stuck in that, and that would feed steam into the steam box. After a while, you get good at it, a few trial and errors. You have to be careful you don't leave it in too long or leave it in too short a period of time. You have to sort of get it just right. And when you do, it bends very successfully. And steaming actually drives the moisture right out of the wood. And then you bend it and put it in the boat and let it dry, and it's very strong and seasoned, which means it won't crack and split. But when you steam it, it kind of cures it. There's no engine in her. She's propelled by oars. I made some oars, some nice long ash oars to row her. Made the mast from cutting down a pine tree and shaping a mast out of it. Had the sails made of cotton, not dacron. All the blocks were made by myself. There were, rope strop blocks. Some of them were made from lignum vitae mallets that had broken handles, and I would reshape them into blocks. Did all my own splicing, all the rigging. And all the rudder fittings, I would just shape them out of wood and have them cast out of bronze, so they would be custom made to fit the shape of the boat. When I launched the boat, the summer was getting on. I had to rig her, so I rigged her with a sprit rig, which is just a matter of a mast and a long pole. And she was a lovely vessel. I sailed her for 12 years and had a great time with her. She was very seaworthy. It's the joy of sailing, being out on the water, giving you a chance to get out there whenever you want to.